Hi, I'm Dr. Scott.
And I'm Dr. Shiloh.
And this is LA Not So Confidential, the forensic psychology and true crime podcast.
Each week, we explore the intersection of psychology, the criminal justice system, and entertainment.
And today, our episode is on the forensic psych topic of when parasocial relationships go wrong. Welcome back, everybody. It is November 2024, and we are persevering, and we're resilient, and we're grateful, as we told you about in our last episode. What else have we got to cover, Dr. Shiloh?
And it's less than a month from Christmas.
Yay, the countdown, because we need a little Christmas. That's a line from the song. We need a little Christmas in Maine. And I can understand that sentiment. Absolutely.
Heck yeah, of course. Yep, here we are back with another episode for you guys on a totally new topic, I promise. Our last two are very similar. But yeah, let's talk about what we did last time. In the previous episode of LA Not So Confidential, we titled that one Love During Lockup. We focused on correctional staff who become romantically or inappropriately involved with inmates. Inspired by Dr. Scott's recent panel with Generation Y at the Berkshire Podcast Festival, we explored the ethical boundaries and implications for forensic psychologists and correctional personnel in maintaining professional relationships within the correctional system. This episode also ties into our own talk that we did at the festival on ethics and appropriate client relationships in forensic psych. And then we highlighted a couple of high-profile incidents where some women having love during lockup were helping people bust out.
Yeah. Interesting. And one of them already portrayed in media as sort of infotainment or entertainment, and the other one coming up with a couple of different versions, one of them with Melissa McCarthy, I believe. But let's get into our topic for today, parasocial relationships. Forbes magazine describes parasocial relationships as a one-sided connection in which an individual imagines a personal bond with someone in the public eye. So this concept was originally coined by researchers Horton and Wall in 1956 to explain the bonds people began to form with personalities on radio, television, and cinema. TV really changed everything, with newscasters and variety show hosts speaking directly to the camera. These researchers observed that people were starting to talk back to their TV sets, and they wondered what that was about. Clearly, as a new phenomenon, that's going to be very interesting. And gosh, who even knows how many people were talking back to their radios in the 20s. Since then, the ways we form parasocial relationships have expanded significantly, with media interactions now woven deeply in our daily lives on a moment-to-moment basis for some people. And in a day and age with an infinite amount of influencers, YouTubers, podcasters, and beyond, it's easy to get absorbed into a feeling of connection and community. And sometimes it goes too far, and sometimes it gets dark, real dark. We have had this topic suggested to us several times over the past few years, especially following some notable incidents in the news between podcast hosts and their listeners. As LA Not So Confidential, we get to interact with our listeners a lot at conferences, on Discord, and through social media. And 99% of the time, it has been an amazing experience. There are times, however, when the boundaries for any creator and listener start to get, a little blurry.
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting introspective exercise in putting this episode together. I mean, certainly as we kind of learn what the research says and looking at how we conduct ourselves and our interactions, it's been super, super interesting. Before we get started, though, today, just trigger warning, there are going to be some murders that we talk about, as well as some stalking behavior, so please listen with care. As just a highlight of a case example here, right off the top, Washington-based podcast host Zareh Zadigi and her husband, Mohammed Malad Nassari, were killed in their Redmond home on March 9th, 2023, by a man who had been stalking her for months. Only 1 week before the fatal attack, Zadigi requested a protective order against Rahman Kota Karim Rezai, 38, a Texas truck driver, stating a deep-seated fear for her safety in the application. The order described months of relentless harassment, and Zadigi pleaded for the restraining order to last 99 years, fearing that he would never stop. Court records reveal that Kota Karam Rezai met Siddiqui through her podcast. Although they initially developed a casual friendship, Siddiqui cut off contact after he began bombarding her with messages. According to NBC News, Siddiqui reported that she blocked him on all platforms, but he evaded these measures by using new phone numbers and fake accounts. In one particularly distressing incident, he sent her 82 messages in a single day. The protective order detailed Khoda Karim Zarai's escalating threats, including emotional voicemails where he would cry, beg, and even threaten self-harm. He pressured her to delete her Instagram or make it public, declaring his obsession with her social media posts. In her plea for protection, Siddiqui wrote, quote, "He has bursts of anger and is completely delusional. These delusions make me fear for my life and the lives of my loved ones," end quote.
According to the Seattle Times, authorities attempted to arrest him, and he was charged on March 2nd with misdemeanor stalking and harassment, and then a bench warrant was issued. So that means that there was a warrant out for his arrest. They weren't able to arrest him, but they went ahead and charged him with this crime and then issued what's called a bench warrant, which is arrest when he is found, basically. However, because he resided out of state, Redmond police were unable to serve him with the order or ensure he had surrendered his weapons, according to Redmond Police Chief Darrell Lowe. And on the evening of March 9th, he broke into Siddiqui and Nasiri's home and fatally shot both of them. Siddiqui's mother, also present in the home at the time, managed to escape and alert authorities. By the time police arrived, they found him dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Chief Lowe, in a press conference covered by The Guardian, expressed the devastating impact of the case. "This is every victim's, every detective's, every police chief's worst nightmare. The fatal outcome," he said, "is the absolute worst outcome for a stalking case, thereby underscoring the need for stronger measures to protect victims of stalking, especially when the threat spans across state lines."
A horrible situation, and obviously a really dark example of what we're talking about here today. And there's an influencer or content creator for absolutely anything nowadays, right? Which contributes to the connection built when a niche topic or interest is catered toward a particular audience member. Sometimes it's entertainment and sometimes it's educational. Obviously, we feel like we're a little bit of a mix of both. And this can leave the consumer feeling like they have kind of picked out a course curriculum for themselves in a lot of ways and are stepping into this virtual classroom with the hosts as educators and other listeners as their fellow students, if you will. But then they get to kind of like, quote unquote, meet on their own time, right? You're in your own space, in your own home, in your own car. However, you have these opportunities to branch out to Facebook groups, Discord channels, Patreon pages, and sometimes live events, which really creates an experience unlike any other. All of this really creates a more concrete connection for the individual consuming the material, which we have all been on the other side of as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you can add creators having their own personal social media, right? Which they might run personally. And then you have the opportunities for DMs and more personal connections. You can kind of start to see here how lines can get blurred for folks with so much access. I feel like Twitter was really the beginning of that, like having access to celebrities and famous people who had their own accounts. But many creators enjoy the pleasant personal connections here and there. However, there are, of course, the more aggressive, bizarre, or angry social media interactions that exist out there as well. So in an interview, actor Ivana Lynch from the Harry Potter movies said that she doesn't always get to respond to messages to her millions of followers in a timely manner. And she's come back to messages like, "If you don't reply to me, I'm going to do something to myself." She also talked about a particular fan who would write massively long messages to her on Facebook on a daily basis, pouring out their feelings to her like she was their best friend. And then they would be furious at her when she didn't reply to them.
So Ivana Lynch is the legendary Luna Lovegood in the Harry Potter series. She's written really well in the books. It's a really great presentation in the movie of this character that is other. This is a person that's sort of on the outside. And of course, that fascinating presentation of her character has likely contributed to how people are brought to her. So, Ivana Lynch, the legendary Luna Lovegood, as well as other actors from the franchise, have taken up various charitable causes. And Miss Lynch, especially, has used her celebrity to advocate for animal rights and welfare as a global ambassador for world animal protection. And she works to support their mission to end suffering of farmed and wild animals.
Wow. Thank you for that very nerdy tidbit of knowledge, Dr. Scott. Parasocial relationship much?
Probably. I just think the character, I think it's more, I mean, she seems like a lovely, lovely woman, but the character is so adorable in the books and in the movie. I think that's probably why. But, you know, her example is rooted in fame and celebrity, and there are many infamous stories of how fandoms get escalated in that arena. And if we turn our attention back to content creators, you have real people, generally without agents, managers, attorneys, PR teams. They're just trying to get their creative projects out there and maybe make a little bit of money, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things that generates movement in your media is sharing a little bit about your personal lives. So when creators share more of their personal lives, it boosts engagement on platforms. And by giving followers a glimpse behind the scenes, creators foster this sense of authenticity and relatability and accessibility that make fans feel more connected to them as individuals rather than just these distant online personas. And this openness then builds trust and loyalty, and it encourages followers to engage more consistently through likes, comments, and shares. Now, additionally, personal stories and insights make content feel unique and intimate, often sparking deeper conversations and creating a stronger sense of community among followers. This approach can transform casual viewers into dedicated supporters, enhancing the overall impact and the reach of that creator's content. This research then supports that sharing of personal information, thoughts, feelings by the speaker has a positive influence on the intensity of parasocial interactions. Furthermore, the experienced parasocial interaction correlates with the intention of listeners to subscribe to the podcast and make use of those back channel communications.
Yes, which are endless these days. It's really interesting. You know, before we were even podcasting, when I tried to come up with a creative project to sort of have for myself just in life. And I hadn't really been too much of a creative person outside of like dance many, many moons ago. I looked into, you know, this world of travel writing. I mean, travel writing makes it sound a little bit more than it actually was. But, you know, I was doing some travel blogging really from a standpoint of wanting to have a digital medium in which to have these travel diaries for, you know, not just myself, but then after my daughter was born and we were starting to do family trips together. Plus, I loved reading travel blogs just to get research on where I should go and what I should do and what I should stay away from. And I wanted to kind of lend to that community. So there was a piece of me that wanted to put that out publicly, but that was very foreign to me and very foreign, especially from a person who is a law enforcement officer, where our culture locks down anything personal out into the world for a lot of the reasons we talked about in our last episode of the type of population you're working with, right? So I remember after I started my travel blog, of course, like the next step was to put an Instagram to it. And I love Instagram, just remains my favorite because it's so visual. And I had been to talk about parasocial relationships, there was a travel blogger that I really admired. I felt like we had a lot in common because she was in academia. She was getting her PhD in a totally different subject in history. She studied a really interesting part of history. She studied recipes from like, I'm going to get this wrong, like the 16th century for medicinal purposes. Very, very cool. And she would travel to Italy and go into these archives. And anyway, she was just someone that I was like, hey, I admire your work. If you don't mind, I'd love to like pick your brain a little bit about what works to get your stuff out there. And she was lovely. And she said, you know, it feels awkward to everyone at first, but people really respond when you have, yes, an image of something beautiful or a great location, or you travel to a place, but when you're in the photograph, like just that seeing another person in the photograph really works. It does something for your engagement. And I was just like, this is not something I want to do. And she's like, I know, I feel like a fucking weirdo when I go set up my my tripod and it's just me and I'm taking a
Right.
picture of myself in my cute
Right.
outfit in front of this gorgeous building or whatever. So it was nice to kind of talk about that to her, but it put me in this place where I was like stepping into this territory that I didn't know if I liked or not. And I kind of got over it. But as I was thinking about that story and like knowing that I was going to talk about that today, I thought it's so crazy because she said she was going to be studying out here in California. And I just wrote her and was like, hey, if, I can give you a ride from here to here and I'd love to like take you to tea and pick your brain a little bit. She was going to be at the Huntington Library and Gardens doing some research. And she did it. Like I could have been a total weirdo. And it's like, I was trying not to be a weirdo. I was very cognizant and like how I was writing her. But talk about like getting into this space of what is acceptable behavior and interaction with someone you don't really know.
Well, I mean, it is strange, but I love that you bring up that example because being an Anglophile, like I just like love all things like, merchant ivory and sort of, romantic expression of classical English literature. And one of the things they talk about in those periods of time, or the way they portray it, is how those relationships start. Like
Mm,
prior to the advent of instantaneous communication and introduction of people wrote letters. I
yes.
am writing to you because we share a connection through my distant cousin so and so, and I will be traveling to this part. And those things happen. I think that there's such a shifting perception and consciousness about sort of what's close, what's too close. I mean, I don't know if they necessarily are that comparable when it's somebody like us that has like 10,000 listeners a month, that are
Right.
listening to us, and a handful of those are interacting. But I think that that's lovely that you made that, connection. And also there was some history so that she kind of got an idea of who you were. And who knows, maybe she also said like, okay, this weirdo is taking me to tea and I'm putting my phone tracker on so you can make sure that I don't
I
end up
hope
in the Mojave.
I hope she fully open source looked me up as much as she could beforehand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So back in 2006, researchers David Giles and John Maltby identified three types of parasocial relationships. And those three types are entertainment social, intense personal, and borderline pathological. The key factor distinguishing these types is the level of control one has over their feelings. Hold on to that. And I'm going to say it again. The key factor distinguishing these types of parasocial relationships is the level of control that one has over their feelings. So, in the entertainment social category, Giles and Maltby found that most parasocial relationships fall into this category. It means that you're drawn to a celebrity or a character because they're interesting, and being their fan adds something fun to your real life relationships. Now, this might morph into taking part in a fan club, chatting with friends about the latest celebrity scandal, or looking up information about them in books, magazines, or online communities. You are fully aware that you don't actually know this person, but that following them and kind of getting a glimpse into their lives, or at least a curated view of their lives, is enjoyable. And there's nothing wrong with that. It can even be a great way to make friends who have the same interest.
Yes. The next one is intense personal. So this is the second most common type of parasocial relationship is the intense personal variety, which Giles and Maltby describe as involving, quote, intensive and compulsive feelings about the celebrity, end quote. In an intense personal parasocial relationship, you're aware it isn't real, yet you struggle to control your feelings for the celebrity or character. While it's common to have a celebrity crush here and there, this attachment goes further. It may feel like this person is your soulmate, is your best friend, or someone just to be idolized. Those with this intense personal attachment might feel compelled to check the celebrity's social media daily or find it hard to focus on other areas of life, such as work or school. And these strong emotions can interfere with building real life relationships and may even cause tension when others don't share the same feelings.
And now we get to the final category, borderline pathological. So thankfully, this is the least common. And unfortunately, it's the most dangerous form of parasocial relationship, the borderline pathological type. I mean, if you've been listening to us for a while, it's already hitting on two very significant keywords there. In these cases, a person loses control over their thoughts, their feelings, and sometimes even their behavior. This extreme attachment can escalate into actions like stalking or violence. So, Giles and Maltby describe two typical beliefs held by people in borderline pathological parasocial relationships. One is, I would gladly die to save the life of my favorite celebrity. And the other is, if I walked into my favorite celebrity's house, they would be happy to see me.
Hmm.
Sounds like questions on like the hair psychopathy scale,
Right.
right? Or on the MMPI, like how you would respond to those. So a notorious example of this kind of attachment is the case of John Hinckley Jr., who attempted to assassinate US President Ronald Reagan in 1981. Afterward, Hinckley explained that he shot the president in an effort to impress actress Jodie Foster.
Yes. And I would say, some complementary episodes to this episode today is assassinations, stalking. There's a lot of crossover here. But these researchers, for once, I feel like really nailed it. We talk about so many typologies and categories of different disorders and offenders. I think the way they titled each of these three categories is perfection and really just captures very concisely what we're talking about here. And here's some advice that the authors say that I think just makes me love them even more in terms of kind of evaluating yourself. They say, quote, parasocial relationships aren't good or bad. They just are. It's best to think of them as a lens for understanding your mental health. If you experience parasocial relationships as positive, you're probably in a pretty good place emotionally and socially. If your parasocial relationships feel overwhelming or they start taking over your life, you may have some underlying mental health challenges to address, end quote. So there's just three categories here, and yet it hits a really big span. This can bring complete joy to your life and be healthy and foster relationships, or you could be to the point where it's pathological and you're starting to engage in some aggressive or even dangerous behaviors.
So, did you know that it's been reported that listening to more podcasts per month and higher social engagement with podcasts was tied to greater presence of meaning in life? Were you aware of that?
I was not. When I saw that research summary, I was like, very cool. I'm glad someone's studying this.
I know and also like what's funny is like that even the way that sentence is phrased here in our script today sounds like I'm trying to sell you something, right? But it is very interesting because podcasts have been noted to be especially powerful with an auditory manner of storytelling, educational learning, and connection. So it's also been shown to positively impact mental health by fulfilling people's need for social connection. And many podcasts and their podcast hosts foster these relationships, creating a genuine sense of community among their listeners. However, on the downside, parasocial relationships with podcasts can have negative effects. This is because they're one-sided and therefore they cannot replace real-life connections. And I'd go so far as to even say all parasocial relationships, not just in podcasts, but in various forms of media, whether it's OnlyFans or whatever, or a cam girl. You have to be careful about that because it's really one-sided. This lopsided dynamic may then create a false sense of intimacy, leaving fans emotionally invested in individuals who remain ultimately strangers, right? And during COVID, this was magnified for a lot of people as we endlessly searched for entertainment. Podcasters had more time to produce content for their listeners.
Yes, we did. We had more time.
We're talking about ourselves. Yes.
And we sat in many a closets during that time, not leaving our homes either. But people learn in strikingly different ways, right? Beyond tactile or kinesthetic learning, primary learning styles include auditory, visual, reading and writing, logical, social, and solitary. Auditory learners observe information through listening, while visual learners benefit from images and diagrams. Writing learners prefer text-based material, and logical learners excel with structured problem-solving tasks. While social learners engage best in group settings, we have opposite to that. Solitary learners prefer self-study and more introspective activities. Each style reflects unique preferences in processing and how we retain information. Now, research coming out of the COVID years indicates that podcasts can be an effective educational tool, particularly benefiting auditory learners. And as auditory learners process this type of stimulation very efficiently, it makes sense that the medium would be very attractive to them. The research suggests that podcasts allow listeners to revisit material at their own pace, which can be really nice. And of course, YouTube is another medium that is really top dog these days. A 2024 study looked at individuals who consumed lifestyle YouTube channels and what their self efficacy was like. Self efficacy is a person's belief in their ability to complete a specific task or achieve a goal. And the research here revealed that an increase in self efficacy was actually positively correlated with increased viewing of their lifestyle YouTuber of choice. So there was no statistically significant difference between men and women in this realm. And this is all something that totally tracks with what we learned from the creator of social learning theory, Albert Bandura, all those years ago, that role models raise people's self-efficacy because they are seen as sharing knowledge and teaching the skills needed to accomplish a goal or a task. And it seems no different that those role models can be on YouTube. So I have a question for us to maybe just talk about a little bit here. Do you think that podcasts create more of an opportunity for a parasocial relationship to form, even beyond other types of content creation, YouTube, TikTok, just social media in general?
I
Curious what you
absolutely
think.
do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Why?
remember there was a great show years ago, at least it was great in the first few seasons, and it was sort of like a little bit raunchier version of Saturday Night Live. It wasn't live, but it was called Mad TV. So
Oh,
based on
yeah.
the magazine, Mad Magazine. And it was actually quite edgy humor. It was really hilarious, but there are stuff there that would never get on network television today. Like they really pushed the edge. It was an incredibly diverse cast, and
Yep.
they pushed the edge on talking about racial and cultural issues, you know, in a way that In Living Color had sort of set the precedent for.
Sure.
But there was a really poignant, funny skit one time with one of the actors, and he's just like acting like he's super happy, and he's walking around his apartment and he's getting so ready to hang out with his friends. And he's talking about, like, he's kind of talking to his friend, like, I just can't wait. This is going to be so much fun. And then he turns on an episode of Friends and he's
Okay.
talking to each of the characters. And I remember it being like really funny, like at that time, you know, like, haha, what a weirdo. And now remembering it and then going back and looking for it on YouTube, you realize, like, oh, there's a version of this that's been around for years, right? Even
Yeah.
going back to like the early days of radio, or
Soap
one of the things.
operas.
Oh, absolutely. Soap operas where, you know, viewers have not been able to tell the difference between the actor and the role that they play. But then
Right.
there was also in serialized drama, you know, back in the days before Telegram, there was a serialized story out of England. And I don't know if it was written by Charles Dickens, but it's another famous author. And this story had a character named Little Nell, and people were waiting on the docks for the ship to come in, knowing that the last installment of the story about Little Nell, then they wanted to know if Little Nell survived or not.
Oh my
So maybe
gosh.
that's not a parasocial relationship with an individual, but it certainly is the investment in the character, right? So I think
Right.
that this may be linked to something in us integrally and intrinsically about our need for community on some level,
Mm.
regardless of how your personality presents or regardless of what your interpersonal skills are. We do have an investment in community and connection. It just may be directed in different ways. What do you think?
Well, I do. I just personally, anecdotally feel like podcasts particularly can generate more parasocial relationships or intense parasocial relationships. I don't know if what my opinion is tracks with the research so much, but I think it's partly the way that we consume them. I'm definitely getting more into YouTube, but I am more of a podcast consumer than a YouTube consumer just because I can listen in my car and I won't sit down and like watch YouTube videos for as long as I can listen to something.
Exactly.
So it's interesting, like the way that I consume it, which I think I'm a little bit of an auditory learner. That's probably one of my top two ways that I like to take in information. But there's something about like leaving a little bit to the imagination where you're not seeing the person or they're not directly talking to you or to screen or what have you that lets you sort of fill in those gaps. But I think it really nurtures intimacy. It feels one-on-one. It feels like you have a familiar voice kind of casually chatting away in my ear and often in the privacy of my own space, right? So I think all of that really lends to intimacy. And I think for a lot of people, that lends to the friends, right? The friendship experience, like you're talking about. So yeah, I think there is something about podcasts that probably creates that a little bit more than other mediums. And maybe it is the absence of the visual piece. Like you do get to just fill in that gap for yourself.
That's what I think too. I'm glad you said that because for one thing, I'm not going to sit down and watch a YouTube video of just a person talking unless I'm going for a lecture or some
Right.
kind of educational thing. Like otherwise, like if I'm watching a screen, it's going to be a movie or a TV show I'm watching or something that I can do while I'm finishing up laundry or something, right? So yeah, I very much, my learning style falls in auditory and kinetic.
Yeah.
So I've got to like, while I'm driving or something is like, that's actually kind of even cementing the information further. It turns out that it's not just the manner in which podcasts are put out into the world, but also the podcast's hosts' behavior, not the content that correlates with creating a perfect environment for parasocial relationships. Totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. And we found an undergrad's master's thesis that explored this very topic and was able to look at several specific factors. So first one being the combination of social dexis. And social dexis is the way that something is said in an authoritative or a professional manner while describing personal characteristics primes listeners to physically and emotionally feel closer to the host. The second point is that listeners may also see the host as more trustworthy because they convey that they care for the listener's well-being. Well, that makes a lot of sense. This is what our profession is, and we do care about our listeners' well-being. Lastly, when hosts respond to the parasocial conversation by addressing listener questions, listeners may feel that their effort to the parasocial relationship is reciprocated. And I've been in that position too. Like when somebody responded back to something that I said online, it's like, oh my gosh, so-and-so, like supposedly Holly Hunter responded to something that I posted on her page, but like, was it really Holly Hunter? I don't know. It might have been Holly Hunter's fan page manager or something, but
well, and there's so many ways that you can respond to your listeners if you want to, right? Whether it's just YouTube, it's there, people can post comments, you can go back, or Instagram, or something more personal like a direct message, or even an email. We spend a lot of our time responding to emails, and we know there's still some we haven't gotten to.
I know there's 3 of them I have to get to today.
There's 3 of them.
There's 3.
I thought it was really interesting also to kind of think about, as content creators ourselves, our own parasocial relationships with other content creators that we have until we get to meet them in real life or work with them virtually, collaborate on a project or do a talk together. It's just kind of interesting to think that we have this within our own sort of community. I mean, there's people we still have never even met that maybe we've done interviews for, or we've had them on the show or what have you, and we're kind of exchanging ideas. But it's just so, talk about Venn diagrams, or like being in this like inception moment, or being in this inception moment of, hey, we have parasocial relationships with other content creators. And then when we do meet, we can like bond over some of these parasocial experiences that we get with listeners. It's so weird to
both positive and negative. And to reiterate, the overwhelming majority of the people that we engage with are just absolutely lovely. And we feel so fortunate. We talk about it all the time about how supportive and fantastic our listeners are.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's explore how parasocial relationships impact us in other ways potentially. So, first, the research shows that our expectations from real life relationships may be skewed by parasocial relationships. And this is particularly powerful when it comes to romantic expectations. A 2018 study found that social comparison can ultimately decrease our overall happiness and life satisfaction. The research showed that using certain social media platforms like blogs and Instagram is positively linked to social comparison, leading us to feel that others' lives may be better than our own. It's important to recognize that any meaningful relationships in real life will require effort and commitment and isn't just as easy as a post or a moment in time. Despite what the comments on a sweet photo or a heartwarming celebrity story might suggest, every couple experiences highs and lows, and lasting relationships aren't built on destiny. A key part of feeling fulfilled in your relationships is the joy of spending time and effort nurturing these bonds to really create fulfilling real life connections.
The second clear issue is that investing too much time in parasocial relationships can hurt your real relationships. And in a 2019 study, it found that people with strong parasocial relationships with celebrities may feel less satisfied in their romantic relationships. And this is because the emotional investment in a celebrity can reduce motivation to invest time and effort into real life partnerships, leading to neglect or dissatisfaction. So the study also revealed that most people view romantic feelings toward a celebrity as a form of betrayal, suggesting that even parasocial cheating can negatively impact real life relationships. Balancing celebrity interests with commitment to real life relationships is essential. Escaping into fantasies about a celebrity won't address underlying relationship issues and may ultimately make them worse. I would go so far to say that there's nuance here. I would like to say that we really need to look at the nuance in this study. So you can't paint with a broad brush that everybody that is really into a parasocial relationship means that it's pulling away, because I know plenty of straight guys that are obsessed with football players.
Right, right.
Now, maybe their dedication to the game or dedication to that person's career is intense, but you would not say that it pulls away from their personal relationship. Now, I understand that there's sexual attractiveness issues going on if it's someone that is obsessed with someone or very focused on someone that they're attracted to. But if the relationship is going wrong, the parasocial relationship may be a symptom rather than the
I agree.
underlying cause.
Yeah, and speaks to, some other major issues in relationships where, maybe your time online or your social media consumption or just having your nose in your phone is taking away from the intimacy building with the person,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that you live under the same roof with. So, yeah, all of that's very, very interesting. In the paper, Currying Favor with the Algorithm, Online Sex Workers' Efforts to Satisfy Patriarchal Expectations, the authors analyze the ways online sex workers have to navigate complex boundaries between their online presence and personal lives while balancing expectations from their audiences and partners. Published by Amber Cutie Forum, the study zeroes in on the unique challenges that online sex workers face in managing these parasocial relationships, in which viewers feel a sense of intimacy or even friendship with these content creators despite a lack of actual personal connection. These relationships, often encouraged by online algorithms, push workers to perform what is now termed affective labor, which is a form of emotional work aimed at keeping viewers engaged to sustain a steady income. So it's kind of the tale old as time of people get really attached to exotic dancers and strippers. And now you got to kind of cater to that to continue to have income coming in. It's just
Because
digital
it's
in
your
this sense.
job. Yeah. I mean,
Yes,
you're viewing it as a job. They're viewing it as a relationship because, to an extent, whether they're aware of it or not, they're objectifying you.
totally.
So the research outlines how online platforms, which are clearly and historically structured by patriarchal norms, often expect sex workers to perform in ways that align with conventional male centric ideas of femininity. And these norms make it harder for workers to be seen as professionals while also contributing to a persistent double standard. So the viewers are not held to the same expectations as the workers themselves. And this can result in a cultural narrative that delegitimizes the labor and the boundaries of online sex workers who may be stigmatized as immoral or deviant, right? So the authors describe how monogamy, typically viewed as a mutual expectation in relationships, can operate unevenly in this space. Online sex workers are expected to conform to monogamous ideals while being scrutinized for their relationships with viewers. Meanwhile, male viewers often see no issue in watching and interacting with multiple workers, while they're excusing it from their standpoint as it's just entertainment rather than infidelity. So this double standard reinforces just what are already known to be long-standing gender dynamics, and it makes it more challenging for online sex workers to set boundaries without fear of harassment or social consequences. It's very fascinating over the years to see how really toxic men will flip on cam girls or flip. Now,
Mhm.
I mean, believe me, there's some crime going on both sides at times, but I have never seen anything as vicious as a guy who feels betrayed by an online girlfriend because they're doing their job, right? They're just like, they're a cam girl or they're an online sex worker, and suddenly they don't feel special anymore. And then they'll just start completely posting terrible things about them.
Yeah, they just default to that lowest common denominator of objectification and
Yes.
really horrible things. So the study contributes to feminist discussions on labor by examining how the structure of digital platforms perpetuates misogynistic expectations. It suggests that while online sex work offers an avenue for financial empowerment, it also traps workers in patriarchal constraints that undermine their labor security and personal autonomy. Important work. I mean, important research that's being done there.
Yeah.
So, looking at another criminal case here, we're just going to mention one more aside from the one that we talked about at the top. And I think this is an interesting one for discussion as well. In 2021, Ava Majuri was a 15-year-old social media star from Naples, Florida. She gained significant popularity with over 1.2 million followers on TikTok and more than 300,000 on Instagram. She was known, of course, for a lot of things 15-year-olds at the time were known for: her lip syncing, dance videos to popular songs, and she regularly earned over 100,000 views on her posts. However, in the summer of 2021, Ava's life took a disturbing turn when a consumer of her content appeared at her family's Florida home armed with a gun. According to the family, the alleged gunman was an 18-year-old fan who had been bombarding Ava with hundreds of messages on her social media. Initially, Ava's parents allowed her to sell Justin 2 selfies that she had already posted publicly, but then he, of course, escalated things and began asking her for explicit photos. Ava's father, Rob Majuri, stated, quote, "I had an opportunity to text him directly, and I said, she's a minor. You need to stop contacting her or we will notify the authorities," end quote.
So on the day of the incident, Rob recounted that someone had tried to enter through the door with what he assumed was a shotgun. Now, Rob is a retired police lieutenant. So when this perpetrator attempted to enter the home with a gun, he acted in his family's self-defense and he shot and killed the young man. No arrests were made, but the Collier County Sheriff's Office completed a thorough investigation. Following this incident, the family moved and Ava switched to homeschooling. The family explained that they've since increased their security measures and are more vigilant in monitoring Ava's social media accounts, saying, "We're just trying to create a sense of normalcy for her." And despite the traumatic event, Ava has continued to post online. Some people question why we would let her keep doing this, Rob shared, but social media is such an integral part of her identity that taking it away could have been more harmful.
So during the online harassment from this man that eventually led to the shooting incident, there was even another ongoing situation in which the family attempted to file a restraining order against a male student that Ava went to school with. She alleged that he would follow her around campus. I mean, this is a pretty big school. She said he always managed to be walking right behind her. And before, again, the shooting incident, he was even in communication with the man that showed up to her house with a gun that day. So when she would interact with him at school, he would show her Snapchat communications from the gunman who was sending messages to this male classmate of Ava's laced with his intentions about wanting to sexually assault her. So after the incident, she felt that her classmate began engaging in more stalking type behaviors himself towards her. And this is what contributed to her decision to homeschool. Ultimately, the court denied the restraining order. But, I think this is a really interesting case because this sounds really scary for her. And especially, someone at her own school that she actually does know in real life, sort of taking part in communicating with this person and even developing some of these behaviors himself. And then, of course, the incident at their home when someone's trying to break into your house after they say that they want to rape you. But then we also look at, okay, how do we feel about her still posting or her parents supporting that or them allowing her to sell photos to him? It's a really sticky situation. Curious of your thoughts, if you want to add anything to it, Scott.
Well, what I would observe is that there are many types of parenting that we may not agree with the decisions that are being made or the thought processes that go into achieving particular perception outcome. That particular quote from Rob where he says it's such a big part of her identity. Mm-hmm. That may well be true, but if it's creating a dangerous nexus of possibilities for your daughter, then maybe it's not the best thing. Maybe it's not. In my working directly across from a major, huge law enforcement's threat management unit, constantly I am seeing each month a handful of young influencers comes in that are all being stalked, because that's what we're talking about here is this overlap, this Venn diagram of stalkers who are motivated by their really skewed perception of reality from a parasocial relationship. And many of these influencers are completely unprepared. They were thrust very quickly into, maybe a B or a C level of stardom, and they just weren't prepared for it. I mean, you can be a Z-list content creator with only several hundred followers and still have someone who has an intense parasocial relationship that's directed at you. So I think that on a personal level, my decision process would likely have been different. If I had a 15-year-old daughter, we would have had a hard discussion about how we're going to do this. And what about you as a parent? What do you think?
Well, it's just a different form of the same old thing again, right? No girl or woman should have to change too much about the things she's interested in or what she wants to dance to or what she wants to wear to excuse the behavior of men. They're going to take advantage of that and act out criminally. However, we have to educate, have situational awareness about the fact that these things do happen. We don't know if her parents, if they had some really intense conversations about this, especially as her numbers started going up, like, let's weigh the pros and cons here. I know that's what I would have done. It's the same formula as like you and I, the more negative comments we get, we realize, oh, well, that's when our numbers are going up. We're just reaching more people, right? So that's the flip side to it. But it's protecting yourself in ways that you need to on the front end and be as aware as possible and not get laxed in that. I think digitally it creates a new loophole for parents to know about, and you can't just think about the physical safety of your kid. You have to think about what goes on out there. And, us with the training and experience we've had and the populations we've worked with, we know more about the dark underbelly of what's out there, especially when it comes to sexual exploitation online. So I think I'm probably a little bit more overzealous just because I know more. And I would imagine that her dad, being a former cop, also, we're kind of known as being like these helicopter parents or hypervigilant parenting styles, that I imagine that was something going on there. And then you just have to figure out for your family and what you're comfortable with, what do you balance there? Yeah. I mean, I had a 7-year-old that wanted to start a podcast, right? And so we had to think about all of those things about putting at least something publicly out in the world. It's not her whole life, but it was something. So
again, that idea of the dangers of the overlap where the parasocial relationship gets cloudy and the person through disinhibition or a lack of insight begins acting in ways that are inappropriate. We've seen versions of it in the Rebecca Schaefer story, who was a star of
Hmm.
My Sister Sam and engaged with a problematic stalker who really did feel like he was in a relationship with her. And the moment that she did an adult themed film, not an adult film, but moving from a role as an innocent young woman playing a more adult role, he turned violent on her very quickly. You know, there are others that reach out into all sorts of entertainment. And I remember one that was particularly interesting to me was back in 2006. I remember reading a Wired article that was written by David Kushner, and he tells of a stalking incident experienced by Lincoln Park's Chester Benningham and his wife Talinda. And it's very interesting because all of this started from a fan that was just completely obsessed with him as a performer. And both Chester and Talinda had their accounts repeatedly hacked. Their personal messages were edited and altered, and they
Wow.
received numerous anonymous, unsettling calls, as well as figuring out that whoever this person was, they had hacked into their baby monitor and was like
Oh, that's
taking
right.
pictures of their child and saying things to their child in the middle of the night. I mean, just an incredibly creepy situation. The stalker was using information gained through hacked emails and phone records and had access to everything because they had intimate knowledge of their day-to-day lives, their plans, going out for groceries, who's going to use the car today. It was just insane. So they got very desperate. They enlisted the help of a former Secret Service agent named Konstantinos Dimitrios. And that individual was able to trace the intrusions to Devin Townsend, who was a fan working as a computer technician with very high level security clearance at Sandia National Laboratories, which is a classified nuclear research facility.
Awesome.
And Townsend, who justified her actions as just being a fan, ultimately confessed after months of intense monitoring and investigation. So what they did was they reported it, they got the lab in on it. And it was astounding that this woman basically did her day's work in a couple of minutes, and the rest of her workday was spent just hacking into him, like just completely no
Wow.
sense of boundaries at all. So fascinatingly, the case really looked at a lot of troubling security issues and vulnerabilities at Sandia. And that in a bigger picture grew to, well, wait, who is really overseeing our nuclear facilities if this
Right.
kind of thing can happen? But
Oy.
again, that's an extreme example of a parasocial relationship that's really gone wrong. And there are some really great examples also in media. If you have not heard of this movie, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's called The King of Comedy from 1982, directed by Martin Scorsese, amazing director. The film follows the story of a Rupert Pupkin, an aspiring comedian who becomes fixated on a talk show host. And it illustrates the extremes of these parasocial attachments. And if you haven't seen it, please find it, watch it. It contains a masterclass in acting and character development with stars like Robert De Niro playing Pupkin, Sandra Bernhardt, who was sort of a performance artist, stand-up comic at the time. She's amazing. And then
Mhm.
Jerry Lewis in this dramatic turn that really took audiences by surprise. And so great acting, great writing, great directing, really good example of a parasocial relationship.
Never seen it. I really need to go watch it. And especially like I can't remember the name of the documentary, but there's a documentary out right now on Netflix about comedy and the queer community. And I learned so much about Sandra Bernhardt that I never knew. I'm like, I have so little appreciation for who she is and what she did. Just, I think I was too young at the time, but I need to
Have
go
you
back
ever heard
and
Without You, I'm
consume.
Nothing?
No.
Oh my gosh, people out there. I mean, coming at you as your queer uncle, your queer granddad, or whoever's out there listening. If you have never seen a recording of her Broadway show, Without You, I'm Nothing, or heard the recording of it that you can get, or seen the movie version of it, you have to see it. It is just a wild trip of her observations as a queer woman, as a Jewish woman. I mean, it's fantastic. So please
Yeah.
watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We also have Misery, of course. The
of
film
course.
came out in 1990 based on Stephen King's novel. The story centers on an author held captive by his self proclaimed number one fan. showcasing the dangers of really intense parasocial relationships. This novel and movie do a great job in portraying the Venn diagram of overlapping mental illness and parasocial relationships and how they can go awry badly. In the book and TV series Castle Rock, Annie is portrayed as having mild to moderate psychosis, where in the movie, Kathy Bates' character of Annie is more impacted by a severe personality disorder. So it's kind of interesting to tease those diagnoses out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the book has, like, just one sort of flavor of possible supernatural issue. The TV series Castle Rock is an interesting combination of mental illness and supernatural. But then Kathy Bates, they play that movie straight as mental illness and this intense alignment with the character of Misery in all of his books. And
Yes.
when everything comes together, it's very wild movie when it came out. Like really, nobody had ever seen anything portrayed like this intensely with the violence, but so well done, so very well done. And then, of course, one of our favorite series that continues every couple of years with another set of episodes is Black Mirror. And in the episode 15 Million Merits, it portrays a society where individuals form intense connections with media personalities. And of course, it examines the psychological effects of those relationships. It's a very powerful political statement about where we are all moving with just being bombarded with media all the time.
Yep.
Highly recommend Black Mirror. I'd say like 90% of the episodes are so incredibly thought-provoking. There's a couple of clunkers, but really pretty good. So all of these works provide insight into the dynamics of parasocial relationships, and it highlights their emotional impact and the potential consequences. So lots of different presentations of those that have that overlap with stalking, but some really good presentations out there.
Yeah. And just as we wrap up here, we wanted to leave you with some final recommendations on evaluating the influence of parasocial relationship, perhaps in your life. This is taken from some of the works that we have covered today. And I think it's nice that when you find some research that doesn't just give you the research, but gives you like, okay, if this applies to me, then what? Like, how can I manage this or look at it? So in that, I think one marker is financial difficulties. How much of your income is dedicated to maintaining your parasocial relationship, right? If you blow your budget buying every new product, donating to every cause, or getting those season tickets, you might need to evaluate it if it is becoming a problem for you or if there's consequences, financial consequences related to it. Just looking at taking a step back.
So this is a great example of a particular area of today's subject, which is not just about the parasocial relationship, but also about the individual who thinks they're in a relationship with that personality or that person on the other end, but they themselves are being scammed. So, as I was saying before, online sex workers, cam girls are placed in situations that can be difficult for them. However, on the other side, there are nefarious individuals out there that are absolutely designed and intent upon scamming people from money. I have an acquaintance that I've known for years who unfortunately believed that they were in a relationship with someone and got catfished. And it's just over and over and over again, just the amounts of money that this individual has given to this person that they think they have a relationship with. And they do have a relationship with them. The relationship is, I'm giving you money and you are never going to move here and be my spouse.
Yep. Another thing you can do is evaluate misinterpreting interactions that you do have. So, looking at, did your parasocial partner, I love that term, retweet you? Did they seem genuinely thrilled to see you at that book signing? Did the personalized message your friends bought you for that birthday feel extra flirty? Those cameos. That's not a sign that the relationship is two-sided, right? It's a sign that the person in question is perhaps just skilled in the art of what they call fan service, which is good because it's their job. That's part of it. But if you find yourself losing sight of that, it's important to evaluate that. It's so funny that we are talking about this. I saw a TikTok just last night that was on my For You page, and it was this woman in her 30s, but she said, here's a picture of me dressing at an Avril Lavigne concert when I thought she would see me and want to be my best friend. And then it cuts to a photo of her at like 9 years old, adorable in her little Y2K outfit. And she's like, and I was in the nosebleeds, just like that 9-year-old mentality of like, maybe she'll see me in the crowd and we'll be best friends. It was so
Yeah,
cute.
which is very childlike, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
children
yes, yes.
have incredible imaginations and a less profound understanding of the world. So that's
Sure.
developmentally correct, right?
Correct. Another thing to evaluate is, do you argue about your parasocial partner? Does somebody not liking your favorite YouTuber feel like a personal attack? Do you go on social media specifically to shut down the anti Swifties
Right.
or what have you, that you see them as sort of your rivals? Do you get in fistfights after the big game? I mean, we've talked about sports fandom violence. I'll link that episode as well if you want to go back and revisit that. But your parasocial relationship might be turning toxic if you're finding yourself exerting your energy in these ways.
Right. So there are ways to move on from parasocial relationships. First, take a social media break. If you can't break your social media habit, and believe me, I know that I have challenged in that way as well, consider blocking or unfollowing the person in question, and consider doing the same with any fan clubs or specialized news outlets that you've relied on for information in the past about that particular person or group or football player or whatever. And, try and reorient your focus on your real life relationships. Reach out to that friend you fell out of touch with, volunteer at a community center, join a book club, dating app, congregation, rec league, anything. Having a busy calendar with social interactions is incredibly healthier and will also make it easier to move past an unhealthy parasocial fixation. And we are definitely differentiating between healthy and unhealthy
Yes,
here,
yes.
right? And then if it's really problematic, consider talking to a therapist. It might be worth thinking through your circumstances with the help of someone that is an unbiased professional with experience and licensure. Your fictional relationship may offer some very real insight into who you are and what your needs are in the world for you to grow, for you to be healthy, for you to prosper. For example, it's not unusual for people who've experienced trauma to seek out social surrogates, and they can sometimes make a recovery harder. Like you think you're getting something that's helping you, but it's
Yeah.
actually impeding you from getting the growth and the reconciliation that you need. A therapist can help you figure out what's driving that fixation, determine if there are any underlying mental health issues that need to be addressed, and then help you develop healthier coping mechanisms. So just some thoughts,
Yeah.
I would hope that anyone listening has not gone this far or find themselves in this way, but I think these are very valuable tools to have if there's someone that you care about in your life that you do recognize these behaviors. Feel free to say,
Exactly.
the doctors told me this is, if Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh said this, then it has to be true. So we're going to talk to you about it.
Yeah. Well, interesting stuff. I mean, an interesting topic for us to talk about as we kind of look at this
Yeah.
as consumers way before we were content creators and afterwards. So, all right, everyone, we don't have any like closing housekeeping for you. We're coming to the end of the month. We'll be working on your December episodes. And Thanksgiving is tomorrow. If you celebrate that wherever you are at, give me something you're grateful for today, Dr. Scott.
I am grateful that I wake up every morning and have a fantastic coffee machine
That's
that
perfect.
makes wonderful coffee. Like you think about what people didn't have access to in the past. I try and take every little thing that I pick up every time I turn on a hot water spigot, and it's like, wait, I've got magic hot water coming out. This is
Magic.
something that,
It's magic.
200 years ago didn't exist. And I think that
Yes.
finding gratitude in those tiny moments can be absolutely transformational. What about you?
As we record this, I'm on call. We're recording on a Sunday. I've been on call since Wednesday. Knock on wood, it's been very quiet. And although I don't mind being on call, I want to say I'm grateful that has allowed me to get sleep the last several nights. I feel like I've really needed it this week. It has contributed to me feeling better and my resilience. And yeah, I'm just grateful everyone else is doing well, because when other people aren't doing well, that's when I do have to respond and or answer the phone. So that's a good thing for everyone when my on-call phone is not ringing. So challenge yourself, you guys. Think about something after you turn this off that you're grateful for. It doesn't have to be the big things. It's the little things that matter. We need to bring more of that into our lives, because unfortunately our brains just like to stick to that negativity. So bring something positive in by just thinking about one thing you're grateful for right now. All right, guys, we will see you next time on LA
Not So
Confidential. Take care.
Bye, folks.
We sincerely thank you for spending some time with us today. LA Not So Confidential is part of the Crawlspace Media Network. Each episode is hosted, produced, and written by Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh. Our post-production editing and sweetening magic is handled by the multi-talented Jason Usry of Ear Cult Productions.
Our theme music, entitled Cool Vibes Film Noir, is composed and performed by the talented Kevin MacLeod. He graciously allows us to use his music via a Creative Commons Attribution license. Please check out all of Kevin's amazing work on YouTube.
All of the resources for each episode can be found on our website at la-not-so-confidential.com. You can find us on Instagram at LA Not So Podcast, on X at LA Not So Pod, and on Facebook at LA Not So Confidential. Media inquiries and bookings are scheduled at alienistentertainment@gmail.com.
Once a month, we go live on YouTube on Saturday afternoon. So pay attention to our social media announcements to join our interactive broadcast entitled Behind the Couch, where we interview guests on a number of psych, criminal justice, and true crime topics.
And lastly, we'd be honored if you joined our Patreon at patreon.com/LA Not So Podcast. With a subscription, you get an ad-free listening experience, additional content, host interaction, and you'll be the first to know about upcoming live events, social gatherings, and super cool swag.
Thanks for listening, and join us next time on LA
Not So
Confidential.